image however you want, and then save. If you do that, you will get the image in a square shape. You don't have to use Photoshop or anything like that. You can just do it with the inbuilt software. So I did that, and I increased the number of elements that I've used. That is, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 images. I have repeated those 5 images to make it look like we have more than just 5 images. So take a look at how it affects our scene. So you can see that because of our flex box that we used, display flex command that we used, it is getting wrapped, and after there is no space for the next one. The next one is coming down, and it continues this trend. So no matter how many elements that you're going to put in, it is going to follow the same trend. Now what I did is, as you can notice, when we click about, I have removed the about ID. So I did that because whenever we were clicking about, we were going up till contact. That is because of the nav bar that we have given display as fixed. So it is the nav bar is actually showing on top of everything else. So when we are clicking about is going in such a manner that it is at this position, 0, 0 position. So that is basically behind the nav bar. You can't see anything there because it is hidden behind the nav bar. So what we are going to do is we are going to give a div tag right about here, so that the div tag will come at 0, 0, and it will be hidden behind the nav bar, but it will not affect us because the div tag is empty. The about tag will be a bit below the div tag, and it will become visible because it is being pushed down by the div tag. So let's quickly do that. What I did is I removed the ID about, and I gave it class about try, and I changed the ID hash here to dot, and I matched the class name with it. So after that, we are going to give a div here, and we are going to give ID about, and like we have already here, we have a class filler. So let's use that itself. We will give ID as well as the class filler, and this should probably work. You can see that now there is a bit more gap here. So when you press about, you can see that now about is a bit distant. We also have a few BR tags. Now that we have given this one, yeah, this one. Now that we have given the filler, I don't think we will need it. So let's try that again. Yeah, it's almost the same. The BR didn't have much of an effect, it seems. So now if you press about, you will get up until here. If you press contact, now you can see that contact is going behind. So we'll just do the same. We'll take, we'll copy this, then we'll put it just above contact. Instead of about, we'll go contact. Just give it contact instead of contact info. And this ID we will turn into class, because ID can only be one. And if you have multiple IDs, there will be confusion about the navigation that we are using as a link. So we have a hash contact info. Remove the info part because now our ID is just contact. And now you can see that all the CSS properties have gone. That is because in main.csv we have hash contact info. Instead of hash, we will give a dot that will convert it into a class. And now you can see that everything is back to normal. Another difference, let's just test that as well. Yeah, now you can see that contact comes up, about shows about as well, and home goes to the home of the page. Now the navbar is completely functional. The next difference you will see is that I have changed it this our map so that it comes to the side. We had already brought it to the side, but now we have a bit of gap here. So what I did is I took the form group, and in the form group I gave it a margin of 20%. This gap here is 20%. So that gave the gap between this contact and this map. Another thing that I did is I created a class map window, which I gave to the iframe. In the iframe, towards the right, we have a class. Sorry. Yeah, we have a class named map window. I have given a few properties to that map window. I gave it border radius 15 pixel. That is to make this a bit the edges, the corners a bit curved. I've given it a width of 700 pixel and a height of 500 pixel. Now you can give it percentage as well. If you give it percentage, it will uh, adjust itself based on how your screen size changes. So if you want to do that, you can do that. I have given arbitrary values. Uh, so that's basically all the changes that I have done from yesterday's class. Okay. Now let's move on to JavaScript, the basics of JavaScript. So there were three ways to use CSS. That was inline CSS, internal CSS, and external CSS. In the case of JavaScript, there is two ways. There is no inline. You only have internal and external. For internal JavaScript, at the head part or the body part, it doesn't matter where exactly you give this command. Usually it is given on head. That is the best practice because this is supposed to be loaded before any other visual part. So head is loaded first, right? So in head is what you usually give this. You will give the script tag and the JavaScript code that you want to give it. And the external option is you'll give the script tag as such, but instead of giving the code inside the script tag, what you do is you give it an src, that is source, equal to the path slash file name dot js. So the most biggest benefit of JavaScript is that it can change the attributes of HTML. So basically, you use JavaScript to animate your objects or to change it in real time. CSS can give you animation, but it is very rudimentary. Like in our case, the only animation that happens here is it goes a little bit up and it gets a box shadow. So our animation code, that is property that we use to animate, which is where was it, transition. What this is doing is basically from this to this, take this much time. This much time is what this property is saying. So that's basically the property is doing. From this these properties to these properties, take this much time. So whenever we are hovering, it is taking 0.4 seconds for these properties to come into action. So that is not really animation. It is just giving you a sense of animation. You are not moving anything. You are just putting time between it so that you think that it is moving. So that is how you do it in CSS. In JavaScript, on the other hand, you can actually really change the HTML attributes. So JavaScript is dynamically typed. So there isn't actually any data types in JavaScript. But that is, you don't have to worry about the data types. You can just say var and a variable name. You can put var, not capital, small var, and then you can give any name of the variable. Let's say name, and that is it. Your variable is initialized. Now, if you give equal to 1 or any number, then it is going to be a number data type. You don't have to actually in C or C++, if you want to store an integer, you will have to do int n. You'll have to do int n or float float n or double n. You have to specify what the data type is going to be. Then you have to give the variable name. That's how you do it in regular programming languages. And I'm sure those who have learned computer science are at least familiar with that. So in JavaScript, we don't really have, it is dynamically typed. That is, the type of the variable is decided at runtime. So you don't have to actually mention what the data type is going to be. So, but in the still it is good to know what the data types are. So let's start with that. The basic data types in JavaScript. There is number, big int, string, boolean, null, undefined, objects and symbols. So we won't be looking at objects and symbols because these two data types are at the level of object-oriented programming, like class and objects. It is similar. So it complicates everything to a next level. So let me give you an advice right now. Do learn JavaScript, but in your website, if you are able to avoid using JavaScript, it is better to avoid it altogether because it makes things a lot more complicated than it actually needs to be. If you can get away with animating stuff using CSS, then it is actually better. Better in the sense that it is easier for you. Because if you are using JavaScript, JavaScript is going to give you more performance than CSS. So if you are really good at JavaScript, then go ahead and use it. But if you are not that good, learn a bit more, and until you are done, it is better to use CSS instead. So we will not be looking at objects and symbols. Let's start with numbers. So any integer or float or doubles. Doubles means double the size of float. That's only the difference between double and float. So any integer or float is a number. It is classified as one single data type in numbers. So if you say var n is equal to 1, 2, 3, then n is a number. You can use the function type of, and if you give n as a parameter, then you will get n is number. That is what the function will show you. So now you can see that I haven't given var anywhere. So that is because I have given pseudocode here, not the actual JavaScript code. So this is just to give you an example and not actually accurate. So keep that in mind. Okay, there is a doubt. JavaScript is used for making our website dynamic. Well, like I said, JavaScript can be used to make your website dynamic. Doesn't mean that it is the only thing that is ever used. You usually use CSS to make it dynamic, in the sense, sorry, dynamic or responsive. Because if it is responsive that you're meaning, then CSS is more prevalent there. The media queries is used to make it responsive. In the case of dynamic, I guess you are pointing towards animation, and I already mentioned why. JavaScript is more performant when you're using for animation. CSS can give you a real performance hit if you are doing a lot of animations all together. But if you manage them, CSS can also perform pretty well, but not as much as JavaScript. JavaScript is actually better for that purpose, but it is difficult to learn. The output of JavaScript, that is when you code a function, it is more likely to break your website than CSS. So that's the reason. And let's move on to the second data type, which is big int. So basically, integers larger than 2 raised to 53 minus 1 or less than minus 2 raised to 53 minus 1 cannot be represented using number data type. There is a size limit to what number data type can do. So begin int was recently added to JS. It is around 2018, and why that matters is any later web browsers might not support big int. It might only be supported. Sorry, did I say the entire opposite thing? Yeah. So the older web browsers will not support big int. Only the newer ones will support big int. So if you are using that, keep that in mind. But usually, uh, unless you are doing something on the scope of machine learning inside a website, stuff like that, you won't require anything that is this big. So usually you won't need to use begin. So don't mind it at all. Value is equal to, yeah, so the begin is represented using an n at the end of your integer number. So it is an integer only. It is not a float value. Only integers can be done. Next is string, and this is quite important, just as important as numbers. So it represents your text. Anything in quotes is a string. So you have three types of quotes. One is single quote, the other one is double quotes, and the third one you probably haven't really heard of, backticks. That is, if you look at your keyboard, the key that is right below our escape key, the one with the tilde and another symbol. This is backticks, and this is tilde. You can see this pretty clearly if you didn't notice the backticks. So that is the third type of quotations that you can use. So basically, single and double are quotes are the same in the case of JavaScript. There are programming languages which have a difference between a single and a double quote. In JavaScript, they are same. You can use it interchangeably, but you have to keep in mind that if you open with the double quote, close it with the double quote. Closing it with a single quote, or the or vice versa, like opening with the single quote and closing with the double quote, is not going to give you the proper output. You have, if you open with one type of quote, you have to close it with the same type of quote. So backticks are different because they give you extended functionality. It allows you to embed one string into another, or you can even embed calculations. Now you can see that str is equal to Darth Vader. Str2 is in backticks. You give dollar curly brace open, the name of the variable, and curly brace closed is your father. So the result will be Darth Vader is your father. That's the result that you get. Now you can, like I said, you can do calculations as well. So you can put 1 plus 2 here, and then you will get 3 is your father. So that is the relevance of using backticks. You can embed the another string into it. But if you were to use single quotes in this case, or double quotes, let me give you the example. You use double quotes and you go dollar str1 is your father, then this entire thing is going to be the result. Exactly like this. The str1 is not going to be replaced by Darth Vader. It will come as str1 itself. That's the difference. Now we have Boolean. It is quite simple. It represents a true or false value. It can also be the result of comparisons. Like you can give value equal to true and then use it for you know, if functions, if loops and all that, conditional functions, that is conditional statements. Sorry, and you can use it for conditional statements. Then you have comparisons. If the comparison is true, then you get true. In this case, the comparison is false. 4 is not less than 3, so you get the result false. The value of the variable result is false. Then you have null. Usually, in other programming languages, there isn't an entire data type that is null. It's just what you explain when there is nothing inside a variable. So null in this case is when you have nothing empty inside a variable, or you have no unknown value, a value which is unknown. So in this case, you will get null as the result. You can put null as a value itself. And if you are trying the function that I mentioned at first, type of age, the result that you get is going to be null. The next one is undefined. And unlike other programming languages, again, undefined is a completely different data type. It represents the value that is not assigned, basically. Not just that, there are other examples as well, but basically it represents a value that is not assigned. For example, we are declaring v, let v, or in terms of JavaScript, you can say var something, let's say n. You are not giving it a value, you are not assigning it a value. So if you print n, the n doesn't have anything inside it, or it might have garbage value. So if you check for its type using the variable type of function, if you use that function, then you are going to get undefined. There is also another example, which is if you do n is equal to some value, let's say 15 divided by 0. You usually use this inside any other programming language, you are going to get a zero division error. That is, you can't divide 15 divided by 0, because then you will get something that is not defined. And that is exactly what undefined is. So what is the benefit of this is, when you are using JavaScript, there is a good chance that sometimes you are not aware of what data you are doing. So you are basically using variables to do it. So some variable might have 0, and you might end up dividing it by 0, dividing another variable by 0. So what happens is the resultant variable gets the data type undefined, and you don't have to worry about it, because I mean, not in the sense of studying JavaScript, you don't have to worry about it in the sense that it will not break your code. In any other case, if you are doing division by 0, it is going to give you an error, and the program is going to stop there. The program will not go further. You can just think about it. If you are using a website, let's say you are using YouTube, and you clicked on a video, and in the back end, let's say something is working in the back end that has to do with division. We don't know any algorithms of YouTube, so we can't be sure, right? Let's just assume that YouTube has to do a division whenever you are clicking on the video. So if there is a zero division error and you are using a regular programming language, what happens is there is an error and the website crashes just there because the program has stopped. JavaScript doesn't stop like that. That is the benefit. So in if you divide by zero, JavaScript will just give undefined uh, as the value, as the data type of whatever you are uh, divided by zero, and the program will keep on running. It will not stop. So that is the benefit of JavaScript. Now we have declaration. This is how you declare a variable. Basically, you give var and then the variable name. Keep in mind that the keywords that are being used in JavaScript are case sensitive. So you can't give a capital V here or a small letter. You can't change this keyword. It has to be all small letter, all lowercase, var. That is for the variable. So again, you don't have to think about the data types that are going to be assigned because you don't have to assign it yourself. JavaScript is a dynamically typed programming language. So you don't have to worry about what data type you have to assign. It will assign itself. So right now, in this case, I have given string as the input. That is var a is equal to string and var b is equal to concatenation. Now I did var c is equal to a plus b. Now if I print c, what happens is I get a concatenation of these two strings. So what is the meaning of this is you can concatenate two strings by just adding them. That is how you concatenate two strings. Now that was the very basics of wait, there is a little bit more. Yeah. So these are all, what did I do? Yeah. So these are all keywords that you would use in any other programming language. It's the same. So I don't think, is there anyone who is not familiar with programming language at all? Any programming language? Can I get a few responses? Only if there isn't any, if there is someone who doesn't know any programming language. Okay, since there is no response on the chat, I am assuming that you have some exposure to at least some programming language, whether be it C, Python, C++, JavaScript, Java, whatever. I hope that you all know. So I'll just take it pretty quickly so that you are not bored. We have conditional statements: if else, switch, try catch. If you are not familiar with try catch, it is in try you will give a statement, and if in catch you will give what you want to happen. And if there is an error in the try statement, then the catch statement will catch the particular error that is that you have specified. And then there is another condition if you want to do something else. Then we have loops. We have a do while loop and we have a for loop. For loop is basically the same as C, and do while loop is also similar to C. We have loop breakers, which is return and break. In if you have return, what happens is it returns the value. It also breaks out of the function return. Break is to break the loop. You won't get anything out of it. It will just break the loop there, wherever you have declared break. Then you have functions. You declare it using function, lowercase keyword function, and then you give a function name, and then you give brackets. That is basically how you declare a function. then you give curly brace, and inside the code that you want to run. Now, yeah, outputs in JavaScript. That is also an important point. You have 4 different ways of uh, giving output. One is inner HTML, and all of these are case sensitive. You have to give HTML in all caps, while everything else is lowercase. So inner HTML writes into the HTML element. That is, if you take, let's say, div. So what is inside here? Uh, this is the inner HTML. This portion is the inner part of the HTML. That is the space that lies within an opening and a closing tag is described as inner HTML. So that is where stuff is written when you are using inner HTML. Then you have document.write. It directly writes into the HTML output. That is it directly gives it into the screen. So you can't specify where it goes. It might be wherever you are calling the function. It might be random as well. Usually at the start of the screen, that is at x equal to 0, y equal to 0 coordinate. Then you have window alert. What this does is it gives you a pop-up. If you might remember that when I used the get method, we had a pop-up which showed an alert that it is not a secure site because you are using get method. That was from Google, from Chrome. So we will be doing this, and I'll explain it then. Explain better. Okay, so then we have console.log that writes into the browser console. So you might be thinking where the browser console is. You have to go to inspect, and in there you can see this little part here. That is the console. And when you're going write.console, it gives the output over here. It is basically like a command line for JavaScript that is being used in the web browser. So if you didn't catch that, in inspect, right click, go to inspect, and then you have console right about here. It's usually on what's new tab. You can go to the console tab, and then you can even give commands over here, JavaScript commands. So that is how you give outputs. Then now you might have the doubt that using inner HTML, you can write it into the HTML elements. But how do we select which element that we want? Now, if you remember our first few classes, I already mentioned that ID is going to be really important in JavaScript. That is because that is how you get where to write. So this using this command document dot get element by ID and giving the particular ID name, you get the HTML tag that you're going to use. That is how you specify. So if you have multiple IDs, what happens is everything is selected, which you don't want. So make sure that there is only a single unique ID in your JavaScript, HTML tags. So this is an example of using changing the CSS property using JavaScript. First, you take the document and then you get element by ID and give an ID name. Then you specify that you want to change the style, and within style, you are giving what property. So inside style, in this example, the property that is going to be changed is display. And we are setting that display, giving this value to the display. So here it is none. And inner HTML, this is the example for inner HTML. So we have a paragraph, p tag, and there is an ID, which is ID name. And then we have something inside the tag. It is just given the two words, a paragraph. So what we are doing is we are getting the element by the ID name, and to the inner HTML, we are changing it to this. Now what happens is when you run this program, whatever is in here is overwritten by whatever you have given over here. So a paragraph changes into paragraph change. So that's basically how you, that's the absolute basics of JavaScript. So now let's look at some practical examples. How do we, yeah, I forgot to mention how we create a JavaScript file. So in our file hierarchy, let's create a new folder and let's name it JS. Just for the sake of organizing stuff, you don't have to name it JS. You can name it anything. It depends on you. So we select the folder and we create a new folder, and then we name it. Let's say hyphen dot JS. That is the extension for JavaScript. We give hyphen dot JS. Now that is the JavaScript, and you don't need any extension for it. It is, you can use it without any other extensions itself. Now, there is this side right now you can see is already completed. You don't really need JavaScript to do anything else. It's already basically completed. But let's do something with this. Right now, it goes nowhere, right? It goes to action.html. That is where it is going. So instead of going to action.html, we will use JavaScript to capture whatever is inside this forms, and we will give a pop-up that will say whatever is in here. So usually you need to use PHP for the backend, and then you use functions so that whatever this person with this email ID is commenting, it comes to your database. So for database, you will use SQL and PHP. In this case, we are going to use JavaScript, and we will create a pop-up. In that pop-up, we will take whatever the JavaScript, I mean, whatever the form elements have inside of it. Okay, so let's start with our JavaScript. We will give a link. Sorry, not a link. We will give a script. Now, once you have given a script tag, you can write your JavaScript code here itself, and it will work. But if you want the same JavaScript code in any other HTML, you will have to rewrite this code over there or copy paste. I know that you are not going to rewrite it, but still. Instead, we can give an SRC, and then we can give a link that is, it is in js hyphen.js. Once you give that, we can use the JavaScript that we are going to write in here. So what do? We want the values that are going to be inside here. So first, we need IDs inside all of those elements. So what are the IDs that we have? We don't have any IDs. We have form input, and form input. So you can see that we have form input 3 times. and it is only on the input tags. So this ID is not the only way to take elements from HTML. You can also use classes, but the problem is that classes usually are used multiple times. So next time you might want to add, for example, another form over here, sign in, login, something like that. If you want to do that, what happens is you want exactly the same dimensions. So what you will do is you will simply use the same thing, the same classes that are being used here for the sign in and password, uh, the sign in form. That is basically what you are going to create. So in that you will be using this thing again, form input again. So what happens is this JavaScript code, if you are using class, then it is going to be applicable to that as well. So right now we don't have that limitation because it is only being used in contact. So I'll show you how to use classes as well. So we have document dot get element by classes, by class name. That is the function. Get element by class name, and then you give the whatever the class name is. We have form input. We are going to save that into a variable. Let's say var message is equal to this. Now what we need to do is we need to display whatever is, I forgot a semicolon. You need to display whatever the message is. So we are going to use a window dot alert function. In that function, we are going to give message. Okay. Now you can see that there is an output, and that output is object collection. That is basically the pop-up that I was talking about, but we don't have anything that is given inside here. It is giving you an object collection. That is because right now we haven't specified what we have to take out of it. So basically you are taking everything possible that from the this thing. So it is basically a collection of objects. So we need to specify what we want, but before that we want to make it so that it only happens when we click submit. So first we'll remove this action. This is so that whenever we click submit, it doesn't go to some other place. I mean action.html where we have rerouted it. So we'll just remove action from there, and in the input button, we'll have a function, parameter attribute on click. And in that on click, we are going to specify a function. Let's say, what do we call it? Say pop-up. Pop-up function. Now, it will only work if you call the function, but we haven't given the function here yet. So we have to create the function. For that, we are going to use the keyword function. Then we are going to give the name of the function that we used. And the name of the function that we used is pop-up. We are going to give pop-up, open curly brace, and close it after window alert. You can see that when our screen is refreshed, it is not giving you the pop-up. It will only give when you click submit. When you're clicking submit, you will get this. That's basically how you reroute the thing. Now, if you put dot value over here, that basically gives whatever is inside the classes. So now you can see what I meant by undefined. You haven't defined anything. The name, email, and comment is completely empty. So it is undefined. Now let's try giving it a name. Given my name, let's say abc@gmail.com. The message is something. It still says undefined, maybe because classes doesn't work in this one, and we might have to use ID itself. So let's try ID. I thought classes would work, but it didn't. So let's just give it to text area for now. We'll give the ID, let's say comment, save that. And here, instead of getting elements by class name, we're going to get element by ID. We're going to give form input dot value. So you submit, nothing happened. You submit with some comment. It still didn't work because it is going up here. Why is it going up there? Maybe because of the get method that we used. Yeah, we have method get. Yes, we'll try removing that as well. From there, let's try something. And it still didn't work. Now we have a real problem on our hands. That is the exact point that I was trying to make in the beginning of the class. JavaScript really doesn't work as you want it to work. So,
Abhilash,
yeah,
I have a doubt. I think you wrote inside comment your new name, no? You type comment. So you didn't change in the hyphen.js. It's like,
I didn't. Oh, yeah, you're right.
it's a comment
I
now.
didn't get that.
Okay, okay.
Thank you for the. Okay. Okay, now we have changed. Now let's try it again. It says still undefined. Why does it say undefined? So if you have any doubt in the meantime, please ask me. I'll take a look at why it's not working.
I think due to the submit button.
What is wrong with the submit button?
No. I mean, submit is submitting the value to the
Yeah, it is. But
action.
the thing is, it doesn't really matter what. You can give an image here, and then you
No,
can
I
put
mean,
this tag,
the
this
type is
property.
the type
Yeah.
need to be button instead of submit.
Well, that will also work. But my point is that if you are using, uh, this on-click property, anything will work as a button usually. Still undefined, like I mentioned. So it's not because it is a submit or button. Yeah, submit is used for getting our form action. If you're using button, then the form action and form method is not going to work. But if you are giving this particular attribute, you can just put it on an image. And then if you click the image, then this JavaScript property is run. That is the basic benefit of JavaScript. Another benefit, you can virtually make anything into a button and get an output out of it. So I just gave it a check on the internet, and my code doesn't seem to have any errors in it. So we do.
You said the ID name is case sensitive. The comment is C is capital in the US one and it is small in it.
That's a placeholder. Comment ID is small letter. I gave the capital comment is the placeholder, which is this grayed out element. So whenever you are clicking here, writing something here, that comment disappears. That is why you are giving a placeholder.
Okay.
Any other doubts? Okay, so I think I didn't mention this. You don't need to actually put window.alert, because whatever function you are using, it is basically by default, it is window dot that function. So if you are using some defaulted by window, you can give window.alert if you want. This is not necessary. But if you are using some other functions like this one, this is not inside the window element. It is inside the document element. So you have to give document.getElement by ID, and that. Any other doubts you have, you can ask right now. Oh, it was a very basic typo. You can see that the spelling of value is wrong. ALUE. Now it should probably work. Okay, now it is working because nothing came up. I haven't given anything in the command. Okay, let's give something in the command. And it worked. So that is how we use JavaScript in HTML. Now for animation purposes, you can use the style. You can change the style. So I guess we'll try that as well. Let's say we'll change the text. We will change the text to a bit more bolder color or something like that. So let's put another function here. Let's say it's change color, curly brace open. And we're going to give, what do we do? Let's first give the on click command somewhere. Get a clear idea then. Inside over here, we're going to make a button. You have a button tag to make a button. You can see that the button is really, really small, but it is there. You can click it, but right now it does nothing. So for the button, we are going to give a class first, calling btn. Now it has become bigger. And inside the button tag, we are going to give press. That is the value that you need. Now you can see that the button is already big. Now class btn has been already defined for our submit button. So that is why it became just like the submit button, if you were wondering about that. So this is how the button works. if you are putting it outside a form. If you are putting it inside a form, you do this. Instead of type submit, you give type button. Basically the same thing. But if you are using an input, usually it is better to use it inside the form tag. Since we don't want a form, we can just use the button tag. Now we have button and press is on there. Now we can give the on click. And in the on click, we are going to call the function that we created here, change color. And the brackets. Okay. Now we have the change color function. Now what we will do is we'll get element by ID. Now we have h2 with size control. Let's give it an ID as well. Okay, so the ID will be, let's say, color control. So now we'll get the element by the ID. So right now we don't have to save it into a variable. What we want to do is change whatever the value is. So what we will do is directly we'll do document but get element by ID. The ID is going to be color change. I hope that is the ID. Color control, sorry. Color control. And now we have to decide what we are going to change. We want to change the color. So we are going to, that is a style property. It is a CSS property. So we want to change the style. And within the style, we want to change color. And now we will give equal to, and then we will give a value for it. So it's probably better to give a X value. Let's take this. Let's paste it here. So what I have given is hash 2C8EC4. This is what I have given. Let's save it. Now press it. You can see that the color changed. Now, to make things more interesting and apply everything that we learned today, what we will do is we will use an if condition. We are going to give the condition if this thing control C. We are going to completely give it over here. And instead of a single equal to, we are going to give double equal to. I hope that you are already familiar with the differences of operators, the single equal to, double equal to, stuff like that. It is basically the same as any other programming language. That is why I didn't put it here. So that is going to be the first one. And we have else. We're going to give the same thing. But now we will change this color to 0000000. Now that color corresponds to black. Now you can see that it starts with black. And it's not working. Why is it not working? I think it's because we didn't give curly brace. Okay, now we have given curly brace. And it's still not working. Let's try giving another equal to. Might be the problem that that's not the problem. So now instead of giving this uh, into our if condition, we'll give it outside. We'll create a variable for that. Variable uh, color equal to this. And now we'll just use the variable and compare it. Let's hope that works. It doesn't. This is get element by ID. Now let's troubleshoot the issue here. Maybe it is not looking for a string. But then you can't put this value here. Uh, oh, because the problem of the condition itself. So instead, you had to give it some other color because it is starting with not this color, it is starting with this color. The condition is never true in the first place. And it still doesn't work. So now you can see how you are supposed to troubleshoot a program. Valuable experience, I'd say. Let's try putting it into the variable again. And this time, we'll do an alert message, alert, and the name of the variable, color. This time we can probably see what the value we are getting from this. And we are getting no value. So now you know why it is not working. It is okay. It's getting an RGB as a function. So instead of using this to compare it, we might have to use an RGB function. So there is a code here. Let's get the RGB value of this. Okay, just copy this X value, then search on the internet for is it again? This. Yeah, X to RGB. You can use this, give it a value and convert it. Now you can see that you got the RGB values. Now we can use it over here. This time it should probably work. Let's hope that works. No, nothing at all. While we are troubleshooting this, you can ask any doubts that you have. No doubts? Okay, there are a few doubts over in the chat. How can we do animation with JS? Well, basically you do the same thing. You are giving HTML elements, you are taking that and you are giving different properties for it and you are changing it. So that property changes in real time. So it feels like an animation. So how do we do a slideshow of pictures? How we do a slideshow of pictures is that you create a background image of sorts I mean, like this image, you have given an image like this. So this is inside a tag, right? We have a tag over here for the image. We will give this an ID, some ID. Let's say ID image, ID is equal to image, and then we will use JavaScript to get that element, get element by ID, and then we'll use a, timer function. That is, you can simply create it by increasing a variable. You can create a function. Inside that function, every second, the value increases by 1, and it changes the number of, as many images you want to slideshow, that many numbers will be the highest limit of the number. And each time you have, corresponding to what number you have as high, a different image will be shown. So you can use that kind of functionality, and that is how you slideshow an image. Any other doubts? Are there any other doubts? Please do ask, because I'm a bit absorbed with what the error here is.
Abhirash, can we change all the color format to RGB format so that error is that error?
That is not exactly the error. I was hoping that it was the error, but it's not the error, because CSS supports RGBA, RGB function, hex value, and a few of the words themselves. Like you can put black and the color black will come. So we are passing it as a string. And since we are passing it as a string, it should, the value is given directly to CSS. That's not the reason why it's not working. I think I gave the wrong values here. Yeah. Any other doubt? Let me give color control. Over here, right? It's too young. So now, just remember that we don't have color control in our CSS at all. So maybe that might be the reason. I'm not sure. So let's just try that. I will give it a color value. Let's give it black. That's the starting color. And it still doesn't work. Just try it without any statements again. Okay, so it works without any statements. It doesn't work when there is an if statement. Might be the reason. So, okay, that came. First time comes nothing, the second time the value comes properly. Let's just try this statement. Since the output of this alert is giving you us an empty string, there's something really wrong with this. Why is the string empty? I'll instead this is how you use boolean, basically setting it to true so that it will work no matter what. The color changed because our if condition is true right now. Then we get this value. So just for the sake of making it work, I have an idea. Now I won't say that I recommend this to you since it is not working for us. Let's just do this. First, we'll change the color regardless of the condition. We'll change it to uh, the blue color that we have selected. Then, uh, if the color is that color, you understand what I mean. If this is the case, if this condition is true, we'll give black color. This is another way of making it work. Now, if this doesn't work, it probably move on. Okay, now by default it is black. Color changed. The color didn't change back. Why doesn't it change back now? Oh, okay, no. Some reason. Could it be because of this? And it's not changing at all. Okay, let's just leave this one here because it doesn't. It is trying to wait all the time. It's not working. So basically, that's how you usually use animation. In this case, it's not working properly. You use on click to call the function that you want, that is you have written over here, and in that function you will give whichever message that you want. In the example that I had written here, we used display style. That if you put display style is equal to none, then whatever is over here is basically it disappears because it is not displayed basically. So you can use that for animation as well. You can use the scroll height. You can get the use the function to uh, detect where your scroll bar is, and by detecting that, you can make things appear based on what position on the screen you are at right now. That is also a manner of doing, animating the website. And yesterday, I think someone had a doubt of how do we change the scroll bar. It's not actually that we change the scroll bar. What we do is we create an entire new scroll bar using CSS. And whenever we scroll down, we can use JavaScript, and using JavaScript to get the location that we are at, we can uh, emulate a scroll bar with the CSS style which that we want. So it is basically an HTML element which has a fixed position fixed, and you will put it using the top and the left properties. You will put it somewhere where the uh, this thing comes, where the regular scroll bar comes. Then what we do is we hide the actual this one. For that, I had told you what you do. You use overflow equal to none. You use overflow equal to none, overflow colon none for the CSS property. Uh, let's say on the body, then this scroll bar goes away. Overflow hidden, sorry, not none. Overflow hidden, you can see that the scroll bar is now gone, and apparently I can scroll now. Great. What about if you put scroll? Then you can see the scroll bar. Okay, that doesn't work. So basically, that's what you do. You put overflow hidden. Then there is another CSS property. I think I don't remember from the top of my head. To enable you to scroll. Any other doubts? So you have a doubt. Try printing the document dot get element ID. Actually, you have to print. I mean, you have to give what the ID exactly is. If that's what you are trying to mention. And if you are giving the ID as well, what you get is an HTML object is what you get. You already saw that before. So basically, you can now create an entire website from scratch. JavaScript is a bit iffy, and if you want to learn more, there is a lot of online resources. Basically, W3 Schools is one of the best ones there is. You can use W3 Schools. I learned using W3 Schools, and it has both HTML, CSS, as well as JavaScript. and it also has SQL, basic, and PHP. I don't know where PHP is right now. It's not showing up here. And you can use all these to learn new languages. You can search for PHP W3 schools and you will get the PHP one as well. So our topic was really vast, and I tried my best to uh, shorten it into 1.5 hours of every day. I hope that it was really informative and that you have been benefited with this class. Thank you. You can ask any
Thank you,
doubts you
Abhilash.
have. If you have any doubts and you want to vocalize those doubts, you can ask them right now, or you can message in the group. So tomorrow there will be a competition of sorts, and I've already told you how to post your websites on GitHub. So what you have to do is you have to create a website from scratch. Uh, it will be better if you design it using XD. You will get practice with that as well. But that is not really necessary because we are not going to look at the design alone. We're going to look at the live website. You have to uh, create the website and you have to post it on GitHub. If you have any doubts regarding the technical issues, you can ask me and I'll help you with that. But the design must be yours. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Abhilash. I hope that was an effective and an interesting session. We will put a form, feedback form in the WhatsApp group. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Abhilash, there is some more doubts in the comment section.
Okay, what are the doubts? Should we also manually upload all the files? I didn't get that. GitHub, while uploading its readme.md file. No, if you upload this, it will go automatically. Like, for example, if you are using Visual Studio Code, what happens is any new file that you have put, you will get a green color, and any modified ones will get orange color. And now you can just do git bash here. And once you have already given your username, your email, and I told you how to set it up. So basically, all the ways you can look back to that video. After you have set it up, all you need to do is first look at git status. This is not really necessary to check the status. It's just to see what all are the changes. So you can see all the changes in red, and you can use git add space dot. Now it will take a bit of time to add everything. After which, if you do git status, it all turns green because now all of this had been added. Now you have to commit it, commit, and you give a message -m. Let's say and the message doesn't matter. It is just to keep you organized. If you want to stay organized, you can give legible, understandable messages. Otherwise, you can just put gibberish in it and it will matter. After that, you push the website. Push -u origin master. Okay, sorry. It's git push. Git push -u origin master. And you wait it to be pushed to the website. Where do you want to move it to? Topic for it, for the competition. It is what you have learned in the past. You just kind of understand what you have learned, because if you haven't learned anything, it is basically useless for you, right? So it's just to see whether you have learned what you used, what you can use what you learned. Sorry, I mixed it up. So there isn't really any topic. The more different it is from the website that I have shown you, the better. Because otherwise it will just be a copy. As you can see, all the changes have come. The last time we had put in the GitHub, it was the images were weirdly shaped. That is, the shape were not uniform, and we only did up to about. We didn't do anything beyond, and we definitely didn't have this button. We just did it right now, right? So all the changes have come to the website. Now we will be providing you a Google form, and you will have to give what your URL to the website is, so that we can evaluate it. Any other doubt? Yeah, how to remove files after uploading through Git bash. Okay, so if you go to GitHub, you have the option to delete it from there, or you can use a command to do it as well. Basically, I think it is git remove, something like that. If you are if you are the one who is doing it, there is an option here. Where is it? Uh, you can edit the file, or you can delete the file. That is the option you have. You select whatever file you want. You can't select. You can't delete an entire folder, I think. Yeah, you can't delete an entire folder. You can delete it file by file. You can select whichever file you want to delete, and at the right hand corner you have delete this file, and once you press this, it will be deleted. You can edit the file from here as well, and this is a GitHub desktop. It is an app needed. Any other doubts? Can I make any website using my own? Yeah, you can. You can create anything you want. You want to put videos, you can put videos. You want to put images, you can put images. We'll be judging it based on how the website looks, the UI of the website, the UX of the website, and how different it is from the basic website that I have shown you. I mean, there are a few things that you can do. You can, the nav bar, obviously we need a nav bar, but you can change everything else. Nav bar is the only thing here that is usually something that you do require not to change. Everything else you can change. You can make something similar to YouTube, something similar to Google's search page, whatever you like. So let's just say that you are making a portfolio for yourself. And yes, you are getting the certificates after the last day, which is tomorrow, depending on the number of participants. So the certificate is for participating in the this thing, the entire event, which includes the assessment tomorrow. Any other doubts? Assessment can't see. I'm assuming that it is Hindi. ये जो website बनानी है, yeah, the website that you are creating is what you have to. That is your assessment. That was the entire topic we are talking about right now. Okay, so thank you. Any other doubts you have, you can put it in the WhatsApp group.